Well, all the news in terms of 2022 continues to be terrible for the Democrats, according to a brand new Wall Street Journal NORC poll conducted with the University of Chicago. Apparently, they did a poll. The survey found Americans in a sour mood, registering some of the highest levels of economic dissatisfaction in years, according to the journal. The pessimism extended beyond the current economy to include doubts about the nation's political system, its role as global leader, and its ability to help most people achieve the American dream. When asked, would you describe the state of the nation's economy these days as excellent or good versus poor or not so good, 83% said poor or not so good. More than one-third, 35%, said they aren't satisfied at all with their financial situation. This is the highest level of dissatisfaction since NORC began asking the question every few years, starting in 1972. Just over one quarter of respondents, 27%, said they have a good chance of improving their standard of living, while just under half of respondents, 46%, said they do not. That is a 20-point drop from just last year, which makes sense because when Joe Biden came into office, a lot of people are like, hey, this economy is going to recover. Hey, why would we expect a 40-year inflation way? Hey, things couldn't go so bad. I mean, we just had like a giant COVID pandemic and now we're getting out of it. Probably things will be, oh no. And that is the story of 2021, 2022. The share of respondents who said their financial situation had gotten worse in the past few years was 38%. This is the only other time than 2007 to 2009 that more than 3 in 10 respondents said their pocketbooks were worse off, according to general social science data going back a half century. The survey results show high inflation in particular is driving the dim economic outlook. Inflation is running at close to its fastest pace in 4 decades, 8.3% annualized rate in April, and now households are digging into savings. The labor market continues to be strong, and 2/3 of respondents said it would be somewhat or very easy to find a new job. But the problem is, of course, that even if you find a new job, you are making less money because, again, inflation eats away at everybody's wages and everybody's savings. These are really, really bad numbers for Democrats. And the bad numbers continue. The journal NORC poll showed about 1/3 of respondents were optimistic that people of different races or religions could come together and solve the country's problems. 1/3. Just 13% of respondents said they were optimistic that was true for Americans who hold different political views. 13% of respondents said they were optimistic that Americans who hold different political views could come together and solve the country's problems. And that is because of the polarization that has been generated by the wild social leftism of the Democratic Party, which has now embraced full-scale and intersectional view of the world in which races are to be seen as essentialist and in which we are supposed to believe as the basis for discussion that men are women and women are men. The survey found divisions between the two parties on a range of cultural issues. While about 2/3 of poll respondents said transgender people should be accepted by society, nearly 90% of Democrats agreed with that statement, compared with 38% of Republicans. Just over half of Republicans said their local public schools focus too much on racism. 59% of Democrats said schools focus too little on it. 2/3 of Democrats said the country's diversity makes it stronger, compared with 47% of Republicans. Trudy McClendon, 55-year-old DoorDash driver in Oklahoma, said, quote, there are people that have good Christian morals and those that want to live by their own rules. And that's frankly sounds probably about right. She said the country's racial diversity is a good thing. She pointed to the media for sharpening racial division. She said, I just think there's a lot of incidents that get made to sound a whole lot worse than they are. And that sounds rational to me. Social media companies are taking the heat as well. Nearly 2/3 of respondents, 64%, said platforms such as Facebook and Twitter are harmful for society because they emphasize differences between people. Just over 1/3, 34%, said they're helpful because they provide a way for Americans to share their opinions. Well, the thing that social media does more than anything else is nationalize every issue. So there's a local story and suddenly becomes a national issue, where before it just would have been a community issue that got solved inside the community. And that's a lot easier to do because you know your neighbors. You know the people who live around you, generally speaking. Those numbers are devastating for Democrats. Joe Biden came into office with the pitch that he was going to be the adult in the room. He was going to fix everything. We were going to suddenly have a feeling of solidity and unity because that evil, bad man, Donald Trump, is now gone. And so now Joe Biden would come in and he would snooze us all to death. He would come in, he would be dead, and then everything would be fine. That was the pitch. And instead he came in and things are worse than they were under President Trump in terms of polarization, in terms of feelings about the economy, in terms of how Americans feel about each other. And meanwhile, this White House is just attempting to whistle past the graveyard. Karine Jean-Pierre, the new White House press secretary, she was asked about the high gas prices, which are just skunking Americans. I mean, gas costs a fortune in the United States right now, higher than it has ever been by leaps and bounds. She was asked about this, and her response was, well, the gas prices are higher in Europe. Good luck with that. If that's your midterm message, sure, things suck, but you could be in France. Really? Good luck to you.
What happened when Putin started amassing troops on the border with Russia? The price of gas has increased by $1.51. And I also want to add, because this is really important so that people understand and flag that similar issues are happening around the world. In the EU, gas is $8.15 per gallon and has increased by $1.74. In Germany, gas is $8.88 per gallon. It has increased $2.16. In Canada, gas is $6.23 per gallon and has increased $1.93. And all of this has happened since December of 2021. This is to your point, Phil, which is this is a global challenge. This is something that everyone is feeling across the globe.
I love that she has all of those stats available. So that was the talking point they came up with. They knew they were going to get asked about gas prices, and they don't have a plan to lower the gas prices. And they don't have a plan to allow for more drilling, which future supply does impact current price. They don't have any plans for any of that. What they are going to do is lecture you that you could be in Canada. Really good luck with this sort of stuff. There's a reason that Harry Enton, the political analyst for CNN, he says this is the best environment for Republicans in 80 years. In 80 years. Here we go.
Guess what? Since 1938, the Republican 2-point lead on the generic congressional ballot is the best position for Republicans at this point in any midterm cycle in over 80 years. My estimate for the 2023 House makeup, if the election were held today, which again it isn't, we still have 5 months from tomorrow, would be Republicans 236 seats to 241 seats, Democrats 194 to 199. That's based off of a formula of seat-to-seat race ratings from both the Cook Political Report and Inside Election.
By the way, that's Harry Enton actually being pretty cautious, because when he says 236 to 241 for Republicans, Republicans currently hold 208. So you're talking about, on the lower end of that spectrum, less than the 30-seat pickup. Now, that's because Republicans are in pretty strong position going in. They picked up like 15 seats in the last election cycle. But if this is a blowout election, it could easily be 245 or 250. If this really turns into a wave election where it's not Republicans plus 2, it's Republicans plus 8, Republicans plus 10, Republicans could have a historically large majority in the House of Representatives. And this is only exacerbated by the fact that the Democratic Party cannot hold it in. They cannot stop their left wing from running the party. It's amazing. And they still have AOC out there trying to lecture the moderates. Now, how AOC became a leader of party leadership is beyond me. It makes no sense. If you have a party that is largely dependent on swing districts, why are you taking hints from people in Brooklyn who won like 16,000 votes in one primary, and now we're supposed to believe that this person is a representative of the entire Democratic base, which she clearly is not? But unfortunately, the philosophy of the AOCs of the world rules the Democratic Party. So here she is explaining that even though no Latino person in the United States identifies as Latinx, because it's the dumbest crap in the entire world, Latinx is predicated on the idea that somehow female Latinos, right, Latinas, that somehow they are offended by the fact that Spanish as a language is gendered. And so therefore, you have to get rid of the gendered aspect of Spanish by adding an X to the end of words, which, you know how many Latinos and Latinas care about this sort of thing? The answer is negative. Okay, there are generations not yet born who don't care about this and also think it's idiotic. It's just ridiculous. And this is true, by the way, for everyone who is a member of a population that speaks a gendered language, a language that is not gender neutral. If you said to, I'm much more familiar with Hebrew. If you said to Israelis, and we are now starting to call people, the word in Hebrew is anashim for people. Okay, because the suffix at the end of words in Hebrew, plural suffix, is yud mem for male and vav tav for female. I know this is getting abstruse. If you take those suffixes and you just remove them, and suddenly anashim become anashiks, everybody in Israel would laugh at you. And the same thing is true for anyone who is a member of a population that speaks a gendered language. Here is AOC, however, saying, if you think that this alienates Latino people, it's because you're intolerant and you're a bigot and you're stupid. Really, keep taking your hints from this. Really, do it, Democrats. Do it. It's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see how it pays off for you.
There are some politicians, including Democratic politicians, that rail against the term Latinx. And they're like, this is so bad. This is so bad for the party, like blah, blah, blah. And like, it's almost as though it has not struck some of these folks that another person's identity is not about your reelection prospects. Like, this is not about you. Second of all, If putting a little X on your campaign literature is what you think is the difference between winning or losing an election, you need to talk about healthcare more. You need to raise people's wages. You need to talk about more issues that also matter to people.
She's a crazy person. She's a crazy person. So she thinks that you should be able to cram down as much social leftism and gender-neutral garbage as you could ever want, so long as you just talk about Bernie Sanders' healthcare. Good luck with this message, Democrats. I know what you're thinking. It's time to binge some more Ben Shapiro videos. Well, you are right. You should. But first, like and subscribe. Perfect. I'll see you in the next video.